The Sharks prospect pool has grown by leaps and bounds over the past couple seasons. How do we rank them?
You're Locked On Sharks, your daily podcast on the San Jose Sharks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to Locked On Sharks, the premier hockey podcast covering your favorite team in the Bay Area. My name is JD Young, caretaker at the Reef, also co-host of Western Conference Tuesdays on the Locked On NHL Network. I want to thank you for making Locked On Sharks your first listen. Probably part of the Locked On Network. We cover your team every day. If you want to be an everyday, all you have to do is just follow wherever you get podcasts. And of course, you can watch on YouTube as well. And today we're going to rank the Sharks prospect pool before we get into the draft here. And I'm sure after the draft, we will re-rank it again as we're going to have new players joining the pool, the ranks, whatever you want to call it. So before we get into all that, though, do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As playoffs wind down, the sports stop sporting like we want them. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. So, we're going to rank the Sharks prospect pool, their top 10 players. Going to have some honorable mentions, but we have to set ground rules with this. And I have my own personal, because that's always the big question is, well, what's a prospect and what isn't a prospect? And, you know, like there's some sort of, you have to set some rules. So I've come up with some rules. I've kind of been using these the past couple seasons. But here are my rules of what makes a prospect and what doesn't. Under 50 NHL games played. So you won't see William Eklund and Henry Thrun on this list because they are NHL players now, at least in my eyes, right? Like we know William Eklund's never going to be playing on the Barracuda again. Henry Thrun maybe, but like I feel like he's established himself as an NHL player at this point. So that's kind of where I kind of draw the line is 50 NHL games. It has to be under 25, except for goalies who can be 26 because goalies take a little bit longer. And I always swing for upside. That's just my personal opinion. I always swing for the upside. I would rather guy who I think can be a better player than a guy who's a safer pick, if that makes sense. So let's start with some of the honorable mentions. So I have 4 players here who just missed the cutoff. So in no particular order, Tristan Robbins just misses the cutoff. Of course, Robbins, who's played last season with the Barracuda, had a really kind of underwhelming season with the Barracuda, but lost a lot of time due to injuries. So the hope is this year playing a full season with the Barracuda, hopefully being healthy. I really think he's going to be a kind of top 6 forward for the Barracuda and work to be a fourth line, maybe third line type of player for the Sharks going forward, especially as they've added so much talent, as we'll get to here in a little bit. But Robbins, though, I think it's going to be really kind of a solid NHL player or like a really good AHL type of player. I think is kind of where his career is kind of panning out right now. So next on my list of honorable mentions, again, no particular order, Matthias Havlid. So Havlid last year started the season on fire in Linköping, but cooled off and eventually got saw his playing time really kind of shrink, and then eventually started playing on the U20 team for Linköping. For Havlid, I think playing on the U20 team he wasn't going to be playing in the SHL. They were making a playoff push, or they were kind of playing in the playoffs, and they're very they're not just going to put young kids out there. Remember, like even Filip Bystedt was playing third line minutes for them, even as a first round pick for the Sharks. But I think for Havlat, this next season is going to be big for him to try to really establish himself as a top 4 defenseman for Linköping, and then kind of go from there for the Sharks. I still think he's going to spend the next couple seasons over in the SHL. There's no rush to bring him over. I would expect he still has not signed his ELC. I would hope that gets done here when he's in town for training camp. But for Havlat, I think like the mobility's there. Like you see enough for the offense. Needs to continue to work on his actual defensive game. But I think this next season, hopefully, he can really kind of establish himself as a top 4 defenseman for Linköping. I think again, he's only he's 20, 21. Like there's still plenty of time for these guys. Like especially defensemen, it takes a while for these guys to kind of continue to develop. So next among my honorable mentions, Georgi Romanov. A year ago, we had never even heard of Georgi Romanov. And now you could argue he's the best goalie in the Sharks prospect pool. And I don't think you're going to get yes, it's a very shallow prospect pool, but Romanov, I thought really showed well, especially behind a porous young defensive unit with the Barracuda last year. You see that extreme athleticism, his ability to make lateral saves is a sight to behold. And you've seen where the Sharks have really gravitated towards big athletic goalies, and Romanov kind of fits that. So hope for Romanov is that he continues to kind of develop. The Barracuda defense is probably going to be young again this season, but made his NHL debut last year. And, I think you have to be excited about a potential kind of, diamond in the rough in Romanov, who, again, none of us had heard of a year ago at this time. So continue to kind of see where his career goes here. So, and then I think it's a player who's going to be a bit surprising, and that's Thomas Bordeleau. Doesn't make my top 10 here. Bordeleau, I thought he played well in the NHL last year, but it's very much power play driven for him when it comes to his scoring and production. So need to he's going to be fighting for a playoff spot here, or for a roster spot here with the Sharks this off season. And I think it's a big off season for him. He needs to kind of come into training camp and hit the ground running here, especially with some of the pieces that the Sharks have added and will continue to add throughout the off season. But I just think right now I don't want to say his game's kind of plateaued, but we haven't really kind of seen him make that jump I think a lot of us were hoping for him to see. And I just think that some of the other younger players have, again, more upside and kind of swinging for the fences with some of these guys here. So let's get into my actual top 10. So at number 10, Ethan Cardwell. From the 2021 draft. Cardwell, massive season for the Barracuda. Played 71 out of 72 games, had 23 goals, also 20 assists, playing in all situations for the Barracuda on the power play, on the penalty kill. And I expect Cardwell to go into this season being a top line winger for the Barracuda. I know the Barracuda did just potentially get Igor Afanaseyev. And if Afanaseyev, Bystedt, and Cardwell are your top guys, that's a pretty solid, I think, first line of younger players there. Or if that's like your second line and maybe you get a veteran type of guy, kind of first line there, still, I think, though, what we saw from Cardwell, his ability to play in all situations, and I think he's really trending to be a really nice third line forward for the Sharks kind of going forward, and a guy who can play in all situations, play on the penalty kill if you need him to chip in on the power play. And I think just the way he's really rounding out his game. Looks like to be a really solid piece for the Sharks kind of going forward. So, and then we're going to do number 9 here, and then we'll take a break here. So the number 9 player on my list, Eric Polkamp. Overager, of course, from last year's draft. Massive season with Bemidji State, just transferred over to University of Denver, where he's going to be playing on the defending national champions there. But Polkamp, really, you see the offense, but the way he shuts players down at the blue line, where it's like hitting a brick wall for forwards trying to enter the blue line. Not the biggest guy, like he's only 5'11", but just big, but he's big, like stocky and sturdy. Played on the U.S. national team in the World Juniors. Kind of has been one of those guys. Anytime he's been given an opportunity, he's taken advantage of it. And I think if he has a massive season for University of Denver, there's gonna be some whisperings and rumblings about him potentially turning pro. Because I think his game is getting to that point where he's probably going to be ready. So there's going to be a huge jump up in competition, though, from going from Bemidji State to playing with University of Denver. But again, anytime this guy gets an opportunity, he's been able to take advantage of it, and I expect to see that continue with him. And I think Polkamp is looking like a really solid pick by the Sharks, especially in the 5th round. So we'll continue looking at some of these other middle guys, and of course, look at who is the cream of the crop for the Sharks prospect pool here in just 1 minute. I love sports. I love them so much. I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer games, right? And these sports aren't sportsing like we want them to. But with FanDuel, lets me keep on betting sports because FanDuel's great. All I have to do is open up the app, dream up bets anytime, and I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel's hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the Major League Baseball. All right, let's get into number 8. So another new addition to the Sharks prospect pool, David Edstrom, who, of course, the Sharks acquired in the Tomas Hertl trade at the trade deadline. Edstrom had a really nice season for Frölunda. He's going to be back in Frölunda next year. Like, don't expect him to kind of make that jump over here quite yet, especially with Bystedt. I kind of figure my thinking is Edstrom will kind of follow in the Bystedt kind of tracks here, but I maybe at the end of once his SHL season's over, maybe he kind of makes the jump over to San Jose. But had a really nice season in Frölunda, 19 points in 44 games, had another 6 points in 14 playoff games for them, and kind of I expect him to play big minutes. He was already kind of playing first line minutes for Frölunda. I fully expect that. And I think it's going to be very interesting between him and Bystedt and who's going to be long-term fighting for that 3C role, especially with Celebrini, who's not on the list yet because the Sharks haven't drafted him, but Celebrini being, kind of the first line center. Hopefully Will Smith pans out as your second line center. Then that third line center of either Edstrom or Bystedt is going to be a really interesting matchup and battle over the next couple of seasons as these guys continue to develop. I think it'll be interesting. We'll talk. Spoiler: I'm going to talk about Bystedt next, so we can kind of combine the two here. But I think Edstrom's defensive game is a much higher floor and a bit safer. But I think Bystedt's offensive game is much higher than Edstrom. You know me, I always tend to lean offense over the two. So, but I think though, like, or maybe you just end up throwing them on the same line together, and maybe Edstrom's the center and Bystedt is the wing on that line. But I think though Edstrom, like, he's going to be a really solid pick for the Sharks and just kind of develop into a really solid, like, shut it down defensively center for San Jose. And if we're talking about a first round pick who's now your 8th best prospect potentially, that's not too bad for San Jose. So of course, Filip Bystedt, who I have ranked at number 7. He, I think, really impressed us coming over to San Jose and his limited time with the Barracuda. I think his game just kind of tailors to playing on the smaller ice a bit more. Was playing first line minutes for the Barracuda at the end of the season, you know, and him and Cardwell showed some really, really nice chemistry between the two of them. You know, Bystedt, who had 17 points in 47 games in the during the regular season at SHL, then 2 points in 4 games in the playoffs. Started out first line, kind of ended up as a third line, and then jumped up to the second line wing at times for Linkoping. But when he jumped over to in the AHL, 4 goals, 3 assists, 7 points in 8 games. It just really kind of felt like it felt more natural to him, I think, so far in his time with them. So I fully expect him just to kind of spend the season with the Barracuda and getting used to playing a full season of North American hockey. But I think, though, like, Bystedt's offensive game touch higher than Edstrom's. That's why I have him a touch higher. So next guy on the list is Danil Gushchin at number 6. Gushchin, of course, massive season with the Barracuda, was named to the AHL All-Star. Unfortunately, didn't make it because of injuries, and we saw kind of the end of his season get wiped out because of injuries. But I think Gushchin going to be kind of like Borlo, fighting for a playoff spot. I think why do I keep saying playoff spot? Fighting for a roster spot for the Sharks this season, and will be interesting to kind of see where he fits in. Right, we know he produces anytime he's in the NHL. Well, there is concerns, of course, being a little bit smaller guy of, you know, his defensive game and such, but I believe in Gushchin. I think he's good, man, and just needs a chance to play more than like 4 NHL games at a time. Wouldn't be surprised if he starts in the Barracuda and then gets a chance to go play at some point with the Sharks. And you know, could you imagine like Celebrini or Will Smith or Eklund slinging passes to Gushchin? Like, he's going to make the most of those opportunities. And pure sniper, underrated passer, has a little bit of tenacity. I think he'll needs to continue to get stronger and stuff. But yeah, I think Gushchin's well on his way. So number 5. So this was my big debate between 4 and 5 on who I was going to kind of put where, and I was debating Luca Cagnoni and Kasper Halttunen, and I went back and forth on where I should put these guys and who should go number 4 and who should go number 5. And I eventually, like, by the thinnest of margins, I decided to go Kasper Halttunen at number 5. Even though Halttunen monster season in the OHL, like, you see the goal scoring. I really liked the way his game grew and developed over the playoffs. I think he'd be best suited to be playing professional hockey next year. Whether that's go back to Europe, whether that's on the Barracuda. Like, the nice thing with him is you have a lot of options of what you can do with him because of him being in Europe when you drafted him originally. But Halttunen, though, like, there's still I I think it comes down to the upside on Cagnoni, and which I'll get to Cagnoni when I kind of talk to about him. But Halttunen, of course, like he doesn't drive play as well as maybe some other guys. We know the shot, which is freaking ridiculous, right? Like he has an NHL caliber shot. I think he's a really good forechecker. I think he needs to clean up some of his skating a little bit and make him. I think that'll make him a little bit more, especially that first step. A lot of times when, especially if he has to kind of like pivot or kind of like get on his horse a little bit, that first step kind of feels a little choppy to me. And I'm not a big like breaking down skates, but if I can see like I'd like to see that a little bit cleaner. I think that would really help his game a little bit more, but I still can see Halttunen just being like a super sick like power play merchant. And then when you're playing with potentially Celebrini or Eklund or Will Smith, it's very much like just get open and they're going to get you the puck and you're just going to crush one-timers here. So yeah, Halttunen, like his game's really grown on me over the past season, but I just like Cagnoni a little bit more. We'll talk about Cagnoni and kind of the rest of the top guys here in just 1 minute. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors is everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. With the eBay Guarantee Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guarantee Fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, so number 4, Luca Cagnoni. He's really good, guys. And I've said it before, and I will continue to say it. Like, I know he's a 5'9" defenseman, and there's always going to be questions because he's a 5'9" defenseman. But if you look like smaller defensemen in the NHL, they're either really good or they just don't make it. And anytime I talk about Luca Cagnoni, just the way that he works. He's got that chip on his shoulder because of, 1, wasn't drafted in the WHL draft. 2, should have been a second-round pick. A lot of people projected him to be a second-round pick in the NHL draft. Slid down to the 4th round where the Sharks got him at 123. And he just continues to produce. Even this season, right? I was working on my defense. He put up 90 points. Like something that a WHL defender hasn't done in 30 years. And I fully expect him to make the Barracuda next year. And would you be surprised if by the end of the season, he's the best defender on the Barracuda? I'm not saying it's going to happen, but those are world. And I think with Cagnoni's upside, that's why I went Cagnoni over Kasper Halttunen, just because I think there's a world where we're looking at Cagnoni as a like legitimate, awesome second pairing defenseman who moves the puck, can run a power play. And while there's a legitimate world where Halttunen's like a 25 goal scorer, where he's just crushing one-timers on the power play and, from the Ovechkin spot, like I still think Cagnoni will have a bigger impact all around, because I think 1, he can play defense even for a smaller player. 2, he's great in the transition. And 3, he's a freaking wizard in the offensive zone. I just think he will have a bigger impact in all 3 zones compared to Halttunen, who feels more like a little bit of a one-trick pony, even though, like I just mentioned, his game has really grown on me and I've seen a lot of improvements in his game. I just feel like Cagnoni has the upper ceiling of both players. I feel like Cagnoni has more impact on the ice when he is on it. And that's, again, where I'm making a dumb list and I'm splitting hairs on a very dumb list here. You could you could ask me next week and I could be like, you know what, it's Halttunen over Cagnoni, but that's what I went with today is I went with Cagnoni over Halttunen, just in short king love there. So number 3, so we're into the top 3 now, is probably not too much of a surprise here, especially if you've been listening to Locked On Sharks or follow me for a while. Number 3, Shakir Mukhamadullin. I love Mukhamadullin and the way his game is. I know there was questions again, kind of when he got to San Jose and how his game improves. And I've seen so much improvement over his game. I love the way he plays defensively. I know there's still some issues with him kind of pivoting, especially for a little bit bigger defensive men. And I know at the end of the season got washed out because of injuries. But I feel like he's got the makings to be a really good two-way defenseman for the Sharks. And limited time with San Jose last year up in the NHL, but he looked the part for it. And being 6'3", 6'4" doesn't hurt. But I think he plays with a calmness to him, and his ability to move the puck. His defensive game has grown a lot, especially being over the past year, being in North America. And I think he's going to be on the Sharks this year. I think that's the next step for him, is playing in the NHL for more than 3 games. And I think he's going to be an NHL player this year. And the Sharks should do what they can to try to give him that opportunity to play NHL games. And whether that's move off or from some of their kind of older established defensemen, whatever you need to do, Mukhamadullin needs to be playing NHL games this year. That's the best way for him to get better, and find him the right partner. But he needs to be playing NHL games. And I think Mukhamadullin has maybe he's your second or third best defenseman on a really good team, but the way the Sharks are kind of putting their blue line together, like, I think it's going to be very much a kind of defense by committee approach, especially when it comes to generating offense. And I think Mukhamadullin can be a really good piece of that committee. So number 2, of course, Quentin Musty. Musty put up a bajillion points in the OHL. Absolute monster. He's one of those guys where he gets hurt by the CHL NHL agreement, where he can't play in the AHL next year, because I think he is also ready to be playing professional games. He's just going to go back in the I fully expect Musty to play 9 games in the NHL and before heading back to the OHL, even if Will Smith and Celebrini and whoever else are on the Sharks. I think they want to give him a taste, let him kind of experience it. That way he knows what's coming and he can kind of go back in the OHL and 1, put up another bajillion points this year, but 2, kind of continue to round out his game. I expect him to be just a kind of a monster power forward, kind of a for the Sharks here. And yeah, he's good, man. Like, when he puts his head down and just kind of drives to the net, it's a thing to watch. He can shoot it from anywhere. He's got great passing. He's going to play a bajillion minutes for Sudbury again this year. And Quentin Musty is Mike Greer probably goes to bed every night laughing that he got Quentin Musty at 26 overall. It's ridiculous. So, and of course, number 1, Will Smith, the Sharks' best prospect. And by the end of the year, probably isn't going to be a prospect anymore because of the way I rank him. But Will Smith, what have we not said about Will Smith this year? But amazing freshman season. I'm glad he signed his ELC. I think that is the best course of action for him, is to play NHL games. And yes, I've said it before. I know the NHL is not a developmental league, but Will Smith is going to develop more by playing in the NHL than he would by going back to Boston College and putting up a bajillion points and just kind of being a big fish in a little pond in the NCAA. He put together one of the best freshman seasons we've ever had. And if Celebrini didn't do what Celebrini did, we're probably talking about Hobie Baker winner Will Smith, because he was absolutely ridiculous last year. And going to be questions about, his defensive game. And I think finding the right line mates for Will Smith is going to be really important for Ryan Warsofsky this season. He's good, guys. Like, he's so freaking good, especially generating, creating offense in the offensive zone, finding his teammates, utilizing his teammates, putting them in the best position to succeed. I think him, especially if you get like a forechecking monster type of player with him, who that is right now on the Sharks, that kind of up to debate. But if you get someone who can kind of do a little bit of the dirty work in the corners and kind of get it out to Will Smith's going to make teams pay all season long. And it's going to be fun to watch. So that's going to be it for me today. So here's kind of the map of right now the week. Mike Grier has his press availability, kind of pre-draft press availability on Monday, so we'll have reactions to that for you Monday night for Tuesday's episode. Tuesday is we get Bob McKenzie's final rankings, so we'll go through that, kind of look at who's available for San Jose at that point. So that'll be kind of Wednesday's episode. Thursday, day before the draft, so we'll kind of have continue to look at kind of potential whatever news is kind of coming up. Of course, we'll also look at potential options for San Jose, see what kind of other people are mocking, and then going into the draft, we'll have I'll probably rank my best options for the Sharks at 14. I would realistically kind of pound the table for there. Of course, plenty of draft stuff, as I will be in Vegas for the draft. So I'm going to have plenty of draft stuff for you guys there. We'll have a first round reaction Monday or Friday night after. We'll have another episode Saturday after the draft to kind of make sure we catch around all the new prospects 2 through 7. Then I'll be home and we'll get ready for free agency. So plenty of stuff. Make sure you guys are just following along wherever you get podcasts. And of course, you can watch on YouTube as well. Follow the show on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Locked On Sharks. Follow me on Twitter at MyFryHole. Until tomorrow, bye, friends.